The issue of medical marijuana dispensaries in San Diego has come before the City Council a few times since California's Compassionate Use Act was approved by voters more than 17 years ago. Here to talk about the most recent ordinance set to go before the City Council next week are my guest, law professor Alex Crate, former chair of the city's Medical Marijuana Task Force, and Bob Rydell, co-founder of the Alliance for Responsible Medicinal Access. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Alex, highlight, if you will, for us the details of the medical marijuana ordinance that's set to go before the City Council next week.
Yeah, well, this ordinance would allow medical marijuana dispensaries to open up in certain commercial and industrial zones in the city. It would provide distance limitations over how far they could be from one another and from sensitive uses like schools. Dispensaries could be in a lot of parts of the city, but it would be pretty limited. For example, no dispensaries would be allowed in the downtown area or in Hillcrest North Park, really mostly because of the zoning and all the sensitive uses there.
So those are some of the restrictions. Is there anything that is maybe a little bit more liberal or more open as far as the operation of dispensaries?
I mean, this ordinance is definitely more restrictive than the one that the council considered back in 2011. So it's a pretty restrictive ordinance.
Okay. And Bob, your group, the Alliance for Responsible Medicinal Access, lobbied City Council members to support this new ordinance. What have you heard as far as, are there council members who support it? Can you give us a number?
You know, a number, it would be tough to give right now. They are receptive to this issue. They are concerned in protecting the neighborhoods. But what they want to do is stop the proliferation of unlicensed dispensaries in San Diego.
So that might sound odd to people because you're saying they want to stop it, but indeed it actually would also allow dispensaries.
Well, if you go look right now on the internet, you'll see that there's several dispensaries running today that are unlicensed and unregulated. This ordinance will reduce that number drastically and, again, protecting neighborhoods.
Well, and of course there are people still who oppose the dispensaries. And Alex, I want to ask you, what are some of their main arguments?
I mean, I think mostly it's from people who just want to relitigate the Compassionate Use Act, the medical marijuana law passed in 1996. There are a lot of people who just disagree with that law, and that's certainly, you know, a legitimate viewpoint for folks to have. But the reality is California's had medical marijuana laws for quite some time, for over 17 years. And, you know, if people don't like that law, I would say go, you know, through the state ballot process if you want to try and change it. The reality is Californians, San Diegans understand we've got medical marijuana. We have people with medical need. This is just trying to implement that and make sure people have a way to get medical marijuana.
Okay. And Bob, I know you ran a Mother Earth Collective. It was the only medical marijuana dispensary license under San Diego County's restrictive policy. But the U.S. Attorney General shut it down, I believe, in 2012. Why do you think this new proposed ordinance would allow you to operate under the U.S. Attorney General coming in and doing the same thing?
The truth is there's no real guarantees because the laws have not changed. There's been memos come out showing the stance of the federal government. We see what's going on in Colorado and Washington, which is legalization, not medical, that we're dealing here in San Diego with. So, you know, the temperature, I think, has changed. And one of the conditions was strict regulations by local and state regulatory commissions, which they're being developed in San Diego today. And I think that's going to have a big influence on how the federal government's going to react in the future.
And let me get your take on that, Alex. I know last week the city attorney submitted a report to the City Council. What did it say about, as far as the federal government's crackdown under this new ordinance? Perhaps these restrictions would be helpful?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, the city attorney's memo said, you know, we never know, right, what the federal government's going to do. But the federal government, they did issue a memo late last year that indicated one of the things they're going to consider are their strict regulations. And so I think that's why it's so important for the city to enact this ordinance to make sure we've got strict rules of the road in place.
Okay, well, we have a lot more information about this medical marijuana ordinance on our website, kpbs.org. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.